The lockout is over and baseball is back. After nearly 100-day lockout, Major League Baseball owners and the Players Union have finally reached a tentative agreement on a new labor deal. If everyone signs off, we're going to get the full 162-game season this year. Opening day is set for April 7th. There are some rule changes, too. The designated hitter, the DH, finally comes to the National League, and the postseason expands to 12 teams. Morgan Chesky is all over this story tonight. Morgan, this is the first work stoppage baseball has had in 26 years. Finally, it's over. Almost took 100 days. Walk us through what both sides are getting and the tentative agreement that's been reached.
Yeah, there's a lot in play here, Vicky. 99 days going back and forth. And frankly, it did look pretty bleak for a long time. And there was growing talk that we wouldn't even have the beginning of a season here. But included in all of these changes is, as you mentioned, the designated hitter coming to the National League. I actually enjoyed watching pitchers take whiffs at pitches, but unfortunately, that is changing for this upcoming season, which begins in early April. And among the other changes here, as we kind of go down this list that took so long to agree upon from both sides, includes a 45-day window for MLB to implement rule changes. And among these potential rule changes that could happen in this 45-day window, we're talking about a pitch clock, meaning how long between the pitcher, between pitches for the pitcher, ban on shifts from defensive outfielders moving around depending upon who's in the batter's box, and actually larger bases. That's up for discussion as well as a potential change for this 2023 season. I know, I never would have thought that. National League, as you mentioned, adopting the DH. There's also a draft lottery. Now, this is important because it's implemented with the intent of trying to keep a team from tanking. Worst record in the league, higher draft pick. With this draft lottery, they would hope that it would change that to keep things more competitive as the season goes on. They would also have draft pick inducements to discourage service time manipulation. And then they want to limit the number of times a player can be optioned to the minor leagues in one season. So among all of these changes, the base salary was one of the biggest sticking points, and that I should add, that has been raised from $570,000 to $700,000, and this would apply to those young players just in the league, 3 years or less, getting a relatively significant raise here. And we're not talking about the big names that you would see, in advertisements, et cetera. And this was one of the biggest sticking points from the Players Union throughout this entire ordeal. And frankly, it was one of the reasons why a lot of people didn't think this would even happen. This agreement finally reached now 99 days after it began. I remember covering this back in early December, thinking it would be a relatively short discussion. And here we are, well into spring now.
Yeah.
Fortunately, we will have baseball coming back. Vicki?
Well, that is good news. Morgan, let me ask you a couple things, because I think you know a thing or two about the game. It's very traditional. It's America's pastime. So how do you think fans, well, first of all, how do you think the game is going to change? If we're talking about the pitch clock, does that speed things up? You said bigger plates. Does that make it easier to, steal bases or, score a run, right? Because it's easier. It's bigger. And then the whole designated hitter, that was funny. You said you liked watching pitchers having to, hit, and they're not very good. So now somebody else can come in and hit for them, right? So how does this change the game for fans?
I don't think it'll be anything drastic. I do think that for those who grew up with the game, they may have staunch opinions one way or the other, but the casual fan shouldn't notice anything too incredibly different. I do think the shift, the ban on shifts is going to be interesting to see, especially in the playoffs, because by this point, when you've seen a player kind of go through an entire season, you have the outfields and the infields, for that matter, who have seen dozens, if not more than 100 games of where they primarily hit the ball, and they can kind of shift accordingly, cover that part of the field. And a lot of people say that took away the essence of the game, if you will. That was the argument. And meanwhile, you have defensive-minded players and coaches who say you should absolutely do this to better increase the odds of getting an out. So that'll be interesting to see. I don't know if the bases are going to be significantly larger to the point where we would actually notice it with a naked eye looking and watching the game on TV. But that pitch clock could actually, as you mentioned, speed the game up. And I know for a lot of people who may be just casual fans, you're sitting there, you're watching, maybe speeding it up, not a horrible thing here. So
yeah,
time will
exactly.
tell. Yeah, exactly.
All right, well, hey, there's going to be baseball. So that's the good news out of all this. We appreciate you, Morgan. Thank you.
Thanks for watching our YouTube channel. Follow today's top stories and breaking news by downloading the NBC News app.